were entered. We believe it was intelligence security. We've also heard that it could be the presidential palace security. They came in, they told us to stop filming. They said that we are causing great damage.
No criminal charges against Al Jazeera are cited during the raid, or have been since. The only explanation given, an unsubstantiated claim that the channel had incited the revolt. Tahrir Square now looks more like a pilgrimage site. Close to 3,000 gather as our newsroom receives reports that military orders to shoot agitators were so far being defied by soldiers. Our correspondents dispersed, melting into the crowds.
We are in the middle of Tahrir Square. You can probably hear above me the military helicopter. It's been hovering overhead for several hours now, at least from what we've gathered since we've been here.
And every time they circled overhead, it's as if they were flying a little bit lower, and it would make this incredibly loud, thunderous sound. So we really felt that indeed we had reached some kind of critical tipping point.
As fighter jets roared above and military vehicles amassed on the edge of Tahrir Square, protesters felt they were on the brink of a pivotal moment, either the bloodiest or the most unifying in their recent history. The standoff in Tahrir Square on Sunday the 30th of January embodied the wider conundrum. Who, in the end, would break the political deadlock? The president or the people?
Egyptians expect complete and utter change. The barrier has been broken. The limit of their demands is basically the sky.
The lack of leadership means that there is no clarity as to how things will go.
We all felt that, Egypt had definitely changed. The images that were being beamed around the world had definitely changed the dynamic of the interaction. And we knew that by then, Egyptians had begun to break through the fear factor that had essentially paralyzed and crippled them for 30 years.
The images that you are seeing not only important for the people of Egypt, but are undoubtedly going to have wide reverberations all across the Arab and the Islamic world.
Business Latest is brought to you by Capco in just about everything. Business Latest is brought to you by Capco in just about everything.
Home to a diversity of rare species, Latvia's pristine woodlands are a place of magic. But with a strained economy and an eager market, forests are rapidly perishing, and with them their inhabitants. People and Power investigates how 60% of Latvia's timber ends up on UK shelves with a questionable seal of approval. Latvia's Pulp Fiction, at this time on Al Jazeera.
From local traders to international finance, it's commerce that makes the world go round. For global companies and developing markets, communication is the currency, and information is the most valuable commodity. Counting the cost at this time on Al Jazeera.
Now, we are the only international network inside Gaza, but let's get the very latest now with Ayman Mohideen.
For Palestinians, these tunnels a lifeline. Their homes can be demolished in a matter of minutes. Who controls Jerusalem? And by that, who controls the old city? The Israeli government is reluctant to accept the terms of an Arab peace initiative.
Past 2 years have brought Lebanon back to the brink of war.
It's supposed to be Egypt's largest opposition movement.
Ayman Mohideen, Al Jazeera.
staying put despite landmark talks in Egypt. It's day 14 of anti-government demonstrations. These are live pictures from the capital, Cairo. This is Al Jazeera, live from Doha. I'm Darren Jordan. It's 0600 GMT, that's 8 a.m. in Egypt, where opposition groups say the government hasn't met their demands.
No positive response was given to most of the demands. Only some cosmetic rather than substantial demands were accepted.
But the US president says the banned group does not speak for the whole nation.
I think that the Muslim Brotherhood is one faction in Egypt. They don't have majority support in Egypt, so I'm just...
And preparing to celebrate, South Sudan awaits the final results of a referendum on secession. Welcome to the programme. Landmark talks in Egypt have failed to appease protesters calling for the resignation of President Hosni Mubarak. The government has made yet more concessions after sitting down with opposition groups, including the banned Muslim Brotherhood. But 2 weeks into the pro-democracy protests, demonstrators are showing no sign of backing down. John Terrett in Washington has been following developments.
President Obama spoke about Egypt before a huge US TV audience on Sunday. It happened on the Fox network, which was the host broadcaster for this year's Super Bowl, which is the US Football League's championship game and which is watched by an audience in excess of 100 million viewers, both in the United States and around the world. President Obama said that only President Mubarak of Egypt knows what he's going to do next.
Egypt is not going to go back to what it was. The Egyptian people want freedom. They want free and fair elections. They want a representative government. They want a responsive government. And so what we've said is you have to start a transition now. Mubarak's already decided he's not running for re-election again. His term is up this year. And what we've said is let's make sure that you get all the groups together in Egypt, let the Egyptian people make a determination. What's the process for an orderly transition? The Muslim Brotherhood is one faction in Egypt. They don't have majority support in Egypt. But they are well organized, and there are strains of their ideology that are anti-U.S. There's no doubt about it. But here's the thing that we have to understand. There are a whole bunch of secular folks in Egypt. There are a whole bunch of educators and civil society in Egypt that wants to come to the fore as well.
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood, the largest of the 6 opposition groups that attended the talks on Sunday, is holding firm to its demand that President Mubarak resign immediately.
The dialogue has yet to lead to anything clear, concrete or tangible. The demands remain the same, the rights remain the same. There has been no compliance to the majority of demands. There has been some response to some issues that focus more on the superficial than substance, but we continue to hold our position. We demand compliance with the people's right and demands.
Well, Mark Perry is a military and foreign affairs analyst and the author of Talking to Terrorists, Why America Must Engage with Its Enemies. He says Washington may have been caught flat-footed, but now is the time to back the pro-democracy movement.
You have to understand that for 30 years we've been talking to Hosni Mubarak and his regime and nobody else. We haven't engaged with the Muslim Brotherhood. We haven't really engaged with any of the opposition. So whenever we pick up the phone in Washington, that's who we talk to, and this has taken us by surprise.
What is Americans' foreign policy here? Is it democracy or is it support for Israel? I mean, does America have to choose?
I don't think that America has to choose anything but what it's always been in favor of. And wouldn't it be nice to see a president of the United States stand up? And I think that Barack Obama wants to do this. I felt that today watching him on Fox News. He wants to stand up and say unequivocally, we're with the people in the square. We're for democracy. That's an absolute reflection of our values, and that would get him off the high wire, and that would put him right squarely in favor of where I think the American people are, and that is in favor of their values.
So how do you assess this shift in change in U.S. policy in the region? I mean, is Israel likely to lose out long term, or is Washington shift its focus to democracy and values over security? I mean, how do you assess that shift?
I think that there's a real exaggeration about the impact that this will have on American relations with Israel and on Israel. And I think that Mr. Netanyahu is late to this game, but he seems to now be catching up. Democracy and more democracies in the Middle East are the one way to assure Israel's security. Dictatorships won't ever do that, can't ever do that. And I think if we focus on that, that squares the circle. That resolves the debate.
How do you assess, Mark, the back channels now between Washington and Israel? What are they talking about in terms of what's going to happen in terms of the newly